Ji-Hyun was taken aback, her mind reeling from the unexpected proposal. She thought of all the stories she had heard about Min-Soo, the brutality and the power struggles, the whispers of businesses burned and men who disappeared. She thought of her mother's face, weary but proud, and the sacrifices she had made to give Ji-Hyun a better life. She knew she couldn't accept. "I'm sorry," she said, trying to sound firm despite the tremble in her voice. She pushed the box gently back toward him, the diamond ring glinting in the dim light of the rooftop garden. "I appreciate your offer, but I don't think I can do that. My life is my own." Min-Soo's face darkened, his eyes flashing with anger. He snapped the box shut with a sharp click, the sound echoing through the night air. The charming facade vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating stillness. "You're making a big mistake," he warned, his voice dripping with malice. "You'll come crawling back to me, and when you do, don't expect any sympathy. You think your pride will feed you? It won't." He took a step closer to her, his presence looming large. "I can give you everything you've ever wanted. Wealth, power, protection. But you're throwing it all away for what? Your precious independence?" Ji-Hyun stood her ground, despite the fear that was rising up inside her, tightening her throat. She felt a bead of sweat trickle down her spine as she met Min-Soo's gaze. "I'll take my chances," she said, trying to sound brave. She turned to leave, her high heels clicking on the stone floor. As she walked away from Min-Soo, the tension between them was palpable, the air thick with unspoken threats and unresolved emotions. He did not call after her. He simply watched her go, a statue against the glittering cityscape. The cool night air seemed to vibrate with tension as Ji-Hyun descended the cold service stairs alone, the city lights twinkling like stars behind her. She felt like she was walking away from a ticking time bomb, unsure of when it would explode. She clutched the fabric of her maid's uniform, the only armor she had, and stepped back into the empty hotel corridor. The echo of Min-Soo's final words hung in the silence around her, a haunting reminder of the danger that lurked in the shadows. As she made her way back to the ballroom, the sounds of laughter and music seemed to mock her, a stark contrast to the darkness that had just unfolded on the rooftop. Ji-Hyun's life was about to take a drastic turn, one that would lead her down a path of uncertainty and danger, all because she had said no to the Korean Mafia boss. She felt a shiver run down her spine as she wondered what lay ahead, but she steeled herself for the challenge. She would not be intimidated. She would not be swayed. She would forge her own path, no matter the cost. The ballroom was still buzzing with activity, the guests oblivious to the drama that had just played out. Ji-Hyun slipped back into her role, pouring drinks and clearing tables with a steady hand. But her mind was elsewhere, racing with thoughts of Min-Soo and the consequences of her decision. She knew that she had to be careful, that she had to watch her back, but for now, she just smiled and nodded, playing the part of the obedient maid. Little did she know, her life was about to become a lot more complicated. As the night wore on, Ji-Hyun's thoughts were a jumble of emotions, her heart racing with anticipation and fear. She couldn't shake the feeling that Min-Soo's eyes were still on her, watching her every move, waiting for her to slip up so he could pounce. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept wandering back to the rooftop, to the proposal and the rejection. She wondered what Min-Soo would do next, whether he would keep his word and leave her alone, or if he would come after her with all the power at his disposal. The music and laughter of the ballroom seemed to fade into the background as Ji-Hyun's thoughts consumed her. She felt like she was living in a dream that was quickly turning into a nightmare. She knew that she had to be strong, that she had to stand up for herself and fight for her freedom. But as she looked around the ballroom, she felt a sense of unease, a sense that she was trapped in a world that was not her own. And then she saw him, Min-Soo, standing across the room, his eyes locked on hers, a cold smile spreading across his face. Ji-Hyun's heart skipped a beat as she realized that she was in grave danger and that her life would never be the same again. The days that followed were a blur for Ji-Hyun as she tried to move on from the shocking proposal and the ominous warning that Min-Soo had left her with. She attempted to distract herself with work and spending time with friends, but the memory of his words lingered in her mind like a dark shadow. Every time she walked down a crowded street or sat alone in her apartment, she couldn't shake off the feeling that she was being watched. At first, Ji-Hyun dismissed it as mere paranoia, a result of her overactive imagination. But as the strange occurrences started to pile up, she began to wonder if Min-Soo was indeed behind them. It started with small things: a misplaced item, a strange noise in the night, a faint scent of his cologne in her car. Ji-Hyun tried to brush it off as coincidence, but the frequency and intensity of these events began to unnerve her. She would receive mysterious messages with no sender. The words, "You should have said yes," echoing in her mind long after she deleted them. The line between reality and her imagination started to blur, and Ji-Hyun found herself questioning her own sanity. Was she really being stalked? Or was her mind playing tricks on her? Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Ji-Hyun started to dig into Min-Soo's past, searching for any clues that could explain his behavior. She spent countless hours scouring the internet, talking to mutual acquaintances, and even visiting the places he used to frequent. The more she learned, the more she realized that Min-Soo's charming facade hid a complex and troubled individual. There were whispers of his involvement with the Korean Mafia, of the ruthless tactics he employed to get what he wanted, and of the fear that surrounded his name. During her research, Ji-Hyun stumbled upon a name that appeared connected to Min-Soo's rise. It was a man named Sung-ho, a former business partner who had vanished years ago. An old news article mentioned a civil dispute between their companies that was settled quietly out of court. When Ji-Hyun tried to find Sung-ho's current whereabouts, she hit a wall. His social media profiles were abandoned, and his last known phone number was disconnected. This discovery sent a chill down her spine. It was the first tangible thread in a web she was only beginning to see. The unsettling occurrences escalated beyond digital messages. One evening, returning to her apartment in Gangnam, she found a single white orchid placed precisely in the center of her doormat. It was a flower she remembered from the centerpiece at the restaurant where Min-Soo had proposed. There was no note, only the silent, elegant threat of its presence. She left it there, untouched, and entered her apartment with her heart hammering against her ribs. That night, she heard the distinct sound of a car idling outside her building for hours, its engine a low purr in the quiet street. When she peered through the blinds, she saw a dark sedan parked across the road. It was gone by morning. Ji-Hyun's fear turned into a mix of cold curiosity and grim determination. She was no longer just a victim of Min-Soo's obsession. She was a woman on a mission to uncover the truth. She began to document everything, taking photos of the orchid, recording the times of the strange messages, and writing down the details of her research. The city that was once full of vibrant colors and sounds now seemed dark and menacing, as if the shadows themselves were watching her every move. She knew that she had to be careful, that one wrong step could lead to dire consequences. But she was not one to back down from a challenge. With each new discovery, her resolve grew stronger. She would not let Min-Soo intimidate her. She would face him head-on and expose the secrets he had kept hidden for so long. The question was, where would this dangerous game of cat and mouse lead her? And would she be able to escape the clutches of the Korean Mafia boss unscathed? As Ji-Hyun delved deeper into the mysterious world of Min-Soo and his associates, she found herself entangled in a complex web of deceit and conspiracy. The more she learned, the more she realized that her life was not her own, and that every move she made was being watched and manipulated by the powerful forces that surrounded her. She had always thought of herself as a strong and independent individual, but now she felt like a pawn in a game of cat and mouse, with her every step being carefully orchestrated by the players involved. The proposal that Min-Soo had made to her had seemed simple enough at first, but now it appeared to be just the tip of the iceberg, a small part of a much larger and more intricate scheme. Ji-Hyun's investigation had led her to a seedy underworld of corruption and crime, where the lines between right and wrong were constantly blurred, and where the players were willing to do whatever it took to achieve their goals. As she navigated this treacherous landscape, Ji-Hyun couldn't shake the feeling that she was in over her head. She had always been a private person, content to keep to herself and avoid the spotlight, but now she found herself at the center of a maelstrom, with powerful forces pulling her in every direction. She knew that she had to be careful, that one wrong move could mean disaster, but she was determined to see things through, to uncover the truth about Min-Soo and his associates, no matter what it took. The streets of Seoul were always crowded, but tonight they seemed especially so. The neon lights of the city's skyscrapers reflecting off the wet pavement like a kaleidoscope of colors. Ji-Hyun walked quickly, her eyes scanning the crowds for any sign of danger, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. She had been warned not to trust anyone, not even those closest to her, and she knew that she had to be constantly on her guard, ready for anything. As she turned a corner, Ji-Hyun caught sight of a figure watching her from across the street. He was a tall, imposing man with a scar above his left eyebrow, and he looked like he hadn't smiled in years. Ji-Hyun's instincts told her to run, to get as far away from this man as possible, but her legs seemed rooted to the spot, unable to move. The man started to walk towards her, his eyes fixed intently on hers, and Ji-Hyun knew that she was in grave danger. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt beside her, the door opening with a burst of speed. Ji-Hyun didn't hesitate, jumping into the car and slamming the door shut behind her. The driver, a young woman with a look of determination etched on her face, pulled away from the curb, weaving in and out of traffic with a skill that left Ji-Hyun breathless. As they sped through the city, Ji-Hyun caught a glimpse of the man with the scar, his face twisted in a snarl of anger, and she knew that she had just narrowly escaped with her life. The woman drove in silence, her eyes fixed on the road ahead, and Ji-Hyun didn't dare to ask her any questions. She knew that she had to trust this stranger, at least for now, and she was grateful for her timely intervention. As they drove, the city gave way to a more suburban landscape, the skyscrapers and neon lights replaced by trees and quiet streets. Ji-Hyun felt a sense of relief wash over her, knowing that she was safe, at least for the moment. The woman finally spoke, her voice low and husky, as she turned the car into a quiet alleyway. "We're here," she said, her eyes meeting Ji-Hyun's in the rearview mirror. "You're safe now." Ji-Hyun nodded, still trying to process the events of the past few hours. She knew that she had stumbled into something much bigger than herself, something that could put her life in danger. But she was determined to see it through, to uncover the truth about Min-Soo and his associates, no matter what it took. And as she stepped out of the car, into the unknown, Ji-Hyun felt a sense of resolve wash over her, a sense of determination that she had never felt before. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that her life would never be the same again. The silence that followed Ji-Hyun's declaration was not empty. It was filled with the low hum of the building's ventilation, the faint scent of Min-Soo's expensive cologne, and the solid pressure of the floor beneath her feet. She kept her eyes on him, watching the play of emotions behind his controlled mask. The anger was there, yes, a quick darkening of his brow. But beneath it, she saw something else: calculation, and a flicker of what looked almost like relief. Min-Soo leaned back slowly in his leather chair, the movement deliberate. He steepled his fingers, his gaze never leaving hers. "You know," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "but you do not know everything. Sit down, Ji-Hyun." She did not move. The two men who had stepped forward at her pronouncement glanced at their boss, awaiting a signal. Min-Soo gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. They retreated a step, but did not leave. "The proposal was never about controlling you," Min-Soo continued. "It was about protecting you. From them." He gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the glittering cityscape of Seoul. "You have a talent, Ji-Hyun. Your work with those community shelters, your ability to organize, to get things done. It drew attention. The wrong kind. A rival syndicate saw you as a vulnerability, a way to get to me through someone I valued. My offer of marriage was the fastest, most permanent way to place you under my umbrella of protection, to make any move against you an act of war against my entire organization. The truth, this new piece of it, landed like a physical blow. Ji-Hyun's mind raced, reassembling the last few months the strange offers for her charity, the anonymous donations with too many strings, the car that had seemed to follow her home twice. She had blamed paranoia. "You could have told me," she said, her voice tighter now. "And you would have believed me?" he asked, a dry, humorless laugh escaping him. "You, who sees the world in right and wrong. You would have run faster, farther, and you would have been alone when they caught you. My way was flawed, but it was the only way I knew to keep you safe." The room felt colder. The luxurious trappings now seemed like a gilded cage he had built for her with his own twisted logic. "So all of it," she whispered. "The gifts, the introductions, the sudden interest in my life. It was just you building a fence." "Yes." "And my saying no?" Min-Soo's jaw tightened. "It broke the fence. It announced to everyone, to my enemies and to my own people, that you were not under my protection, that you were expendable." He said the last word, as if it tasted bitter. The final, shocking truth settled over her. His proposal hadn't been a demand for possession. It had been a desperate, clumsy attempt at a shield. Her rejection hadn't been an act of defiance against a tyrant, but a refusal of that shield. And in doing so, she had thrown herself to the wolves. The fear she had felt earlier curdled into a cold, clear understanding. The consequences were not abstract. They were the two large men by the door. They were the rival gang he spoke of. They were the dangerous, unprotected life she now faced. She looked at Min-Soo, really looked at him. The Mafia boss was still there, in the cut of his suit and the authority in his posture. But she also saw a man who had gambled and lost, whose plan had shattered against her principles. "I will not live in a cage," Ji-Hyun stated. The words simple and absolute. "Not even one built to protect me." Min-Soo studied her for a long moment. Then, he did something that shocked the room more than her rejection. He nodded slowly. "I see that now." He waved a hand dismissively at his associates. "Leave us." The men hesitated, exchanged a glance, then silently filed out. The door clicked shut behind them. They were alone. "You walk out that door," Min-Soo said, his voice low, "and you are on your own. My influence cannot help you without the formal arrangement. My enemies will see an opportunity." "I understand," Ji-Hyun said. The empowerment she felt was no longer a surge of adrenaline. It was a quiet, settled weight in her chest. It was the weight of her choice. "Then go," he said, turning his chair to look out at his city, dismissing her. Ji-Hyun turned and walked to the door. Her hand on the cool metal handle, she paused. She did not look back. "Thank you," she said, to the window, to the man sitting before it, "for telling me the truth." She opened the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving the opulent office behind. The path ahead was fraught with danger, a path she had chosen for herself. The story that would later shock Korea was not one of a dramatic arrest or a bloody gang war. It was the story of a woman who walked away from a powerful man's protection into a perilous freedom, and of the boss who, against all the rules of his world, let her go. They were both, forever, changed.